Hello, I'm Africa54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory in for #the It's Thursday, January 13th, and this is Africa54. Leaders from the Southern African Development Community say they are extending a troop deployment in Mozambique to help the government fight an Islamic State-linked insurgency. Here's David Doyle.
Southern African countries agreed on Wednesday to extend their troop deployment in Mozambique, where the government has been fighting militants linked to Islamic State. The insurgency, centered on the northern Cabo Delgado province, has claimed thousands of lives since it broke out in 2017. Last year, a multi-billion-dollar liquefied natural gas project was brought to a halt when fighters attacked the town of Palma. Member countries of the Southern African Development Community agreed a 3-month deployment to Mozambique in June last year, which was extended in October. On Wednesday, after leaders met in Malawi, a communiqué said there had been good progress and that the mandate of the SADC mission had been extended. It did not say for how long. Rwanda, which is not an SADC member, has also sent troops. Mozambique's military had been losing ground against the insurgency until it accepted the help. Security forces say areas previously held by militants have been cleared and a number of insurgent bases destroyed.
Well, that was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it is talking with Pfizer about securing supplies of its antiviral COVID-19 pills for the continent. The drug is seen as a potential game changer in fighting the deadly virus. Pfizer says the Paxlovid medication is nearly 90% effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths, and data suggests that it retains its effectiveness against the Omicron variant. Governments worldwide are scrambling to buy Paxlovid, while Merck's Molnupiravir is facing setbacks after disappointing trial data. There are hopes that Merck and Pfizer's experimental pills taken at home rather than in hospital or medical centers could be key in reducing the chances of dying or hospitalization for those most at risk of severe illness. The United Nations Children's Fund says poorer nations last month rejected more than 100 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines distributed by the global program COVAX, mainly due to their rapid expiration date. Poorer nations have also been forced to delay supplies because they have insufficient storage facilities, including a lack of fridges for the vaccines. In a new initiative of the Health Ministry to spur vaccinations, Ivory Coasts soccer fans watching the Africa Cup of Nations are being greeted with rapid tests, masks and COVID-19 vaccines at dedicated fan zones. Rapid tests and vaccines are also being offered at mobile clinics in Abidjan, the center of the COVID-19 outbreak in Ivory Coast. Soccer is the West African country's favorite sport, and thousands of fans are storming the Cup of Nations villages in Abidjan, where the matches are projected on giant screens. One of the tournament favorites, Ivory Coast, is in the same group as defending champions Algeria and Sierra Leone. The country has administered enough doses to vaccinate about 14% of its 26 million people. Not too far from there, startups in Nigeria are helping fight counterfeit pharmaceutical drugs, where the prevalence rate of fake drugs is higher than the global average of 10%. Now, the most counterfeit drugs for anti-malaria, pain, and antibiotics. That's according to the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. Now, to fight the flood of fake pills, the agency, in partnership with the startups, has created stickers with unique codes that manufacturers and distributors can attach to boxes and small bags of pills. Consumers can then use apps on their phones to scan the code and confirm the authenticity. Senegal's regional express train began service in late December between the Dakar and the new city of Diamniadio, 36 kilometers apart. While the commuter railway aims to relieve traffic gridlock, it has also advanced women's job opportunities in the transportation sector. Alison Fernandez and Mbaindir report for VOA.
At the Dakar train station, Marie-Yvonne Ngom starts her working day as an engineer. A computer scientist by training, the 26-year-old Dakar native decided to switch career tracks after spotting a classified ad from CEDA, the company operating the regional express train. Ngom went through a rigorous selection process, then completed a 4-month course.
It was very difficult training. It consisted of theory and practice, understanding the engine's power. It's not just about driving. You also have to understand the operating system, be able to handle it with ease, troubleshoot.
Ngom and a dozen other women are among the 70 drivers recruited by CETA. Such positions traditionally have been held by men, but CETA's managing director said the women performed especially well in training. 5 of them were named team leaders, along with a dozen men.
But it turns out that today we have a feminization rate of 30% in all positions combined. A high rate of them are in support functions, such as passenger service agents, which we found at the station. But we have them, surprisingly, and it's already a good surprise, in more technical professions such as driving and maintenance.
Many passengers seem pleased to have women at the controls of express trains that can travel up to 160 kilometers an hour.
Women are more caring, they're more patient in driving, they're more careful than men, and I think that's a really good thing too.
The fact that this train is being driven by a woman is a major step forward for our country. It shows that Senegal has positioned women where they need to be, that is to say, at the center of decisions.
The TER, a flagship project of the emerging Senegal plan, began operating December 27th. The railway has 950 employees, almost all of them, 97%, are Senegalese.
Lovely. With Omicron infections about to reach their peak in the United States, demand for COVID-19 tests are soaring. But are they measuring up to the hype? VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias investigates.
Jordan Irby and his partner Julia Weil visit COVID-19 testing sites often.
We get tested so that we can see our friends without being concerned that we're spreading COVID.
They'd rather have someone who's trained take samples for a lab instead of relying on at-home tests. The Weil has used self-tests before visiting elderly relatives.
The process itself was pretty easy, but I wasn't confident about what the results said.
Her instinct was right. In 2020, researchers found that in people with COVID symptoms, the antigen tests were less accurate than the PCR tests, which can take a lab 48 hours to process.
We directly compared the Binax Now antigen test to the gold standard PCR test. The antigen test missed detecting 20% of all COVID-19 cases.
There's no conclusive data yet on how well rapid antigen tests work on the Omicron variant, but people can take steps to be more confident in the results. As is, they catch about 4 in 5 positive cases. Testing too early in the infection is discouraged.
If you're testing while you're symptomatic and you have a bad cold symptoms and you have a lot of virus in your system, you're more likely to be accurate in that situation. We do often recommend multiple rapid tests, so not just one test, but you do your antigen test today, maybe test it again in 24 or 36 hours.
Dr. Peter Chen Hung, a professor of medicine in California, says pay close attention to the swabbing technique when testing at home.
Depending on the platform, you swab at least 5 to 10 times on each side, and then you put it in the reagent, and then you just basically have to time it. Not look too soon because it may be falsely negative, and not look too late because they may be unstable chemicals.
President Joe Biden's administration has promised 500 million COVID test kits for American households soon. And local governments are rushing to open new testing sites. They encourage patients to report positives to their healthcare providers. But they also emphasize testing is only one part of the answer to containing the virus.
We still caution our residents and people around the world to follow steps to prevent the spread of COVID-19 regardless of whether or not they have a negative test. And that's maintaining social distancing, wearing a mask when indoors with people outside of your immediate household, and most importantly, to get vaccinated.
Veronica Valderas Iglesias for VOA News, Arlington, Virginia.
Well, most refugees come to the United States with little training and lack the proper skills to find work. But a teenager from the Chicago suburbs decided to address this by collaborating with the local center to teach refugee women how to sew and give them the opportunity to earn a living. Kulsum Khan explains.
So this is another version of the flare sleeve blouse. This one's a little bit wrinkly, but I chose to go with all pastel colors here because I felt it made like a great spring, summer sort of top, and also with the triangle neck.
17-year-old Nuran Khan has always had a passion for sewing and designing clothes.
In sophomore year, I took a fashion merchandising course through my high school, and then I followed that up with a fashion construction course at the School of the Art Institute, and that really got me motivated to delve into fashion more.
She decided to channel that passion into a good cause. In 2019, Khan started All Sorts, a clothing company. The Chicago area nonprofit teaches refugee women how to sew.
At All Sorts, our mission is to help refugee women obtain a sustainable income to support their family. And we do that by training them to be seamstresses.
All Sorts works with ICNA Relief Refugee Resource Center in Chicago to hold sewing classes for the women every week. The women learn to make household items like pot holders, tablecloths, aprons, and placemats, as well as clothing. All Sorts then compensates the women for the items they sew and sells them at community markets and on Etsy and the company website. The proceeds from the sales are invested back into the sewing training program. Some of the women take orders and work from home once they finish the program. ICNA Relief also helps the women find full-time jobs at manufacturing facilities or places that need seamstresses.
So I connect them with that organization, send them to interviews, and luckily few of our graduates were able to work there. So it's a win-win situation for everyone, I guess, because it gives me so much pleasure to see our women flourishing.
Many of the program's participants are earning for the first time in their lives. Badiha Adali came to the U.S. from Morocco in 2018 and took the sewing class last year. The death of her husband left her with 3 children to support by herself. She now works for a local social services organization, sewing uniforms for chefs.
Are you happy that you took this class?
Yeah, it's very happy.
There are 6 participants in the class right now. Burmese refugee Kin Kin Hate is one of them. She is learning new skills and sewing techniques and says she would definitely recommend the program to other refugees from her country.
Yeah, good program. I like it. And I think it definitely builds some confidence in them. And of course, being a very new to this country, it boosts their morale that they can be independent, they can be self-sufficient.
ICNA Relief has seen several Afghan refugees seeking help as more people make their way to the U.S. in the wake of the Taliban takeover of the country. Kazmi expects more Afghan women to join the sewing program in the coming months. Kulsum Khan for VOA News, Chicago.
We are excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, after an automobile accident, cowbells spur a woman to make a big change in her life. We'll be right back.
And humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts
and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science, and technology.
City, rural, educated, all underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Well, the United States and Russia met for talks in Geneva this week with the future security of Europe at stake. But the European Union was not present, and bloc officials are voicing their growing frustration with the situation. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
Russia has massed over 100,000 troops close to the border with Ukraine. Meanwhile, Moscow complains of a NATO military build-up in Eastern Europe and has warned of the dangers of confrontation. With tensions building, Washington and Moscow met for talks in Geneva this week, but the European Union was excluded, to its clear frustration.
On this dialogue, there are not two actors alone. It's not just US and Russia. If we want to talk about security in Europe, the Europeans has to be part of the table.
But the EU is late to that table, says analyst Liana Fix.
The problem here is that the European Union has not been involved formally in talks in 2014 when the Ukraine crisis started. Back then we had Germany and France in the Normandy format and no official EU representative. Within the European Union, the question is who is more powerful, the member states or the EU as an institution itself. And on the other hand, in Moscow, the EU is not taken seriously.
France is leading a European push for what it calls greater strategic sovereignty, driven by concerns over America's commitment to NATO. Paris says Russia's President Vladimir Putin is deliberately trying to bypass the EU.
He has no consideration for the European Union, and he is totally determined to try to put dents in European unity, which is solidifying.
Moscow also aims to undermine the transatlantic alliance, argues analyst Petro Berkovsky.
Russia uses these talks in order to destroy trust between the United States and European partners, and tries to demonstrate that the United States are ready to discuss its security in Europe and discuss its policy in Europe behind the European partners.
Without its own military force, the European Union as an institution may not be taken seriously by Moscow, but it does have a key role to play, says analyst Liana Fix.
When the European Union and the United States now think about economic sanctions towards Russia in case of an intervention, of an invasion of Ukraine, then it is the European Union that will have to deliver an economic sanctions package and has to deliver the agreement of all member states.
Meanwhile, following talks between NATO and Russian officials Wednesday, the United States said transatlantic allies were united.
I think one of the things that Russia has done, which it probably did not expect, it has brought all of Europe, NATO and non-NATO allies alike, together to share the same set of principles, the same ambition, the same hopes, and the same commitment to diplomacy.
21 European Union member states are also members of NATO. And despite the frustration, analysts say the EU recognises that the alliance remains the bedrock of its own security. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
The art of paper cutting is developing around the world and is adapting to different cultural environments. VOA's Gabrielle Weiss spent some time with Valissa Hickman, a paper cutting artist from Seldovia, Alaska, to learn more about the inspiration she derives from the beauty surrounding her.
I started cutting paper when I was in high school. I just played around with it for years, and then I went to college and I studied drawing, and in my third drawing class I did a project where I ended up cutting the drawing out of black paper, and I brought it into the professor and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what you do, like you cut paper." I'm Valissa Hickman and I'm a cut paper artist in Seldovia, Alaska. We're here at my studio. My dad and my grandfather built the house and the shop that I work in. It's kind of designed to be a creative space. It was a different sort of creativity, but it feels really good for just inspiration and making things. I feel like Alaska's different than anywhere else, and having grown up here, I didn't want anything more than to just get out. I decided I really just wanted to travel around the world and see everything and go everywhere and live somewhere with more people and more options.
My seat's too cold to sit on yet.
The first year it was just like everything was great, like there's so many things to see and people to meet. But then by the second year, I started to realize that like people's values were a lot different than mine. And so I missed being in a place where like you have to think about things. You don't just go buy things if they're broken. You have to really think about what you need and what you just want. Living off the highway system in rural Alaska, there's less separation between outdoor life and indoor life. There's definitely frustrations, but it's better to be frustrated than it is to be bored. I'm always looking for inspiration in the world around me, so I like the way people interact with the environment. Having my niece and nephew here and watching them grow up has been really fun. There you go.
Okay, yeah, we got a lot.
Oh, it's got a gunnel, look. It's a gunnel with eggs. 2 gunnels. I want to share pretty things with people. Like, I want to make beautiful things. Is that a skeleton shark? Whoops, now he's gone. I have all this beauty around me. I want to be able to send that out into the world and share that with people.
We'll talk about inspiration. Over 2 decades ago, Natalia Peruz was hit by a car in New York City. While recovering from the accident, she went to Austria, where she saw bells on necks of cows. And that simple vision prompted a huge change in her life. Anna Nelson has a story narrated by Anna Rice.
Bells are magical to me. The shape is like a dress. It's just visually like magic. The more I researched, the more I was fascinated. I have about 700 bells in my collection.
Natalia Peruz is a New York-based musical saw and bell player and busker. The recipient of multiple musical awards, Peruz doesn't shy away from playing on the streets and is always glad to talk about her bell collection.
Elephant bell, bicycle bells. The whole story started from these bells, which I collected from tourist stores in Austria.
Peruz used to be a dancer. She interned at the Martha Graham Dance Company and was sure her future would be connected to dance. But everything changed in a split second She got hit by a car on a New York street as she was making her way home after dance practice. She was badly hurt, both physically and emotionally. The prospect of dancing professionally started to feel very distant and unrealistic. In an attempt to cheer Peruz up, her parents took her on a trip to Austria.
While in Austria, we rented a car, and we were driving, and through the open windows of the cars, I could hear the sound of bells. So I said to my father as a joke, all these different cowherds, they have different pitches of bells. Wouldn't it be fun to collect a whole octave of these cowbells and play them?
Peruz just knew she had to learn how to play the bells. She never had teachers. She read old books, studied old photographs, and used her imagination to do the rest of her learning.
Cowbell ringing is primarily Austrian and Swiss. Possibly you can also find it in France. But anywhere else in the world, these particular brand of cowbells, they're really just in those countries. Possibly there may be some ringer here or there in other countries, like I'm in New York.
Ringing cowbells is hard work. The musician stands in front of an 8-feet-long table and constantly moves from one end to the other, ringing the various bells in front of him or her. Peruz says there's a certain choreography to that, a certain dance-like structure, making it physically quite demanding. In New York, she has been the only solo bell ringer.
Ernest Hemingway wrote, "For whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." Oh, I think the bell tolls for everybody. All of us. There's no escaping the bells.
For Anna Nelson in New York, Anna Rice, VOA News.
I know I'm inspired to do something really cool. I hope it's the same with you. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching us.